G'day ladies and gents, and welcome to my top 10 vehicles of 2019. 2019 has been an absolutely massive year for War Thunder, with hundreds of new vehicles coming to the game, although, some of them copy-paste, but let's not talk about that one. 2019 has probably been the biggest year, and has had the most change on War Thunder in the long run, especially considering the 10.3 battle rating spread, and some of the older vehicles coming back into flavour. Obviously hundreds of new ones, but also several of the old ones coming sort of back into that more favourable matchmaking, or getting a lot more plays, or having a better matchmaker, more well-rounded, and just better overall. And so, here are my top 10 picks. Now do remember, just because I put it at number 10, or number 1, or number 5, doesn't necessarily mean it's in that exact order. There's a little bit of play, and of course, some of these vehicles aren't going to be the best, some of them aren't going to be the meta, but a lot of them are the ones that I personally spent a lot of time in and had a lot of fun in. Some honourable mentions include the Hunter F6 for those absolutely devastating SRAMs, the SO8000 Narval, just for being a really decent plane overall and having those 6MG 151s, the Leopard 1, yes that's right, the 7.7 unstabilized Leopard 1, for being one of those tanks that I can play really sneaky and I have to be really tactical. It puts me on my toes, and when you're in a down tier, it has to be, in my opinion, the best and most fun tank in the game. But unfortunately, those down tiers don't come too often, and that's why it's an honorable mention. The Shenyang F5, also known as the MiG-19F in the Chinese tech tree, for me is incredibly challenging yet incredibly rewarding because of the air-to-air missiles, the fact that it is in fact a MiG-17, and of course the added afterburner for that extra little bit of thrust. It's something that I really enjoyed and spent a lot of time playing. And finally, for my honourable mentions, the Ju-87D5 Stuka. This plane, I've done 2 videos on it, I played a whole lot with subscribers, and I've absolutely enjoyed the living hell out of this plane. Those gun pods are not to be messed with, and you can take the cannons, you can take the machine guns, it doesn't even matter, you're going to have an absolute blast. So, with my honourable mentions out of the way, let's get into the top 10. Coming in at number 10, we have the 10.5cm King Tiger. The 10.5cm King Tiger for me is one of those tanks that I managed to play a lot of, and despite the up tiers to 7.7, it actually isn't that bad. Having to face T29s all day is something that I can regularly do and accomplish with quite ease, to be honest. And having to deal with things like M46 patterns, M47 pattern 2s, even the M48s and M60s, I really don't have that much of an issue with. T54s can be a little bit of a struggle, but again, it's a little bit of a challenge for me, and it's something that I can, get past because of the aspiration to challenge. The King Tiger 105 for me combines decent mobility, decent gun, and that lovely big caliber. And of course, who can forget the armor, which, although admittedly isn't really that great for facing against Heat FS, it certainly is decent and can take more than one shot, which is just enough that I need to get that final shot back and to send them back to the hangar. Coming in at number 9, we have the IJN Yuudachi, which is in fact the only ship to feature on this list. I would have also featured the Kern, but it's not quite my style. I much prefer the Yuudachi. It has an amazing array of torpedoes and a decent array of guns which have a timed fuse, which is extremely helpful for shooting down planes, and also for dealing with torpedo boats. But that high explosive shell does enough damage to torpedo boats, and the rate of fire is pretty much good enough to deal with some destroyers. But it also makes me consider the way I have to play my destroyers. I have to be smart, I have to be sneaky, I have to get the first shot off, I can't be spotted. And it really brings in that sort of destroyer gameplay that I thought at one point was really missing from War Thunder ships. So, at number 9, the IJN Yuudachi. Coming in at number 8, we have the F9F8 Cougar. The Cougar is one of those planes that has sort of found its little niche, being down tier to 8.3, and is now quite strong. Doesn't still quite live up to the Sabres, but it's certainly one of those planes that is incredibly powerful at 8.3. Having recently been given 4 air-to-air missiles in the form of AIM-9Bs, the F9F Cougar combines energy retention, turning ability, low speed handling, and the air-to-air missiles, which are fantastic for hunting bombers. It's one of those planes that I managed to get a really nice high kill game and is in fact on YouTube for you guys to watch. The pop-up will be on the screen in a second. The F9F8 for me is one of those planes that has become fresh and new since being down-tiered and with matchmaker changes. It's really great, and if you haven't flown it out, I would certainly recommend it. At number 7, we have the Centurion Mark 10. This is the last tank to be featured on this list, and honestly, it makes me feel like I'm a bit more of a jet guy than a tank guy, and more jet guy than a prop guy. Doesn't really matter though, because the Centurion Mark 10 is incredibly enjoyable. I used to hate this tank. I used to find it really frustrating to play. I'd always get outmatched by Panther 2s, I'd always get shit on basically by King Tigers, and that's because I didn't play it properly. Now, coming back to this tank after a few years, also with the up tiers, it is actually a bit more favourable. Having to fight against T-54s is really no problem for the Centurion Mark 10. It can deal with it fairly well with the APDS, and of course, if you want to be a little bit cheeky, you can hesh the Commander's Cupolas, which for me is enough to put it on this list in the first place. The 105 hesh with the combination of decent armour, somewhat lacking mobility but stable, and of course the stabilised gun. Not to mention the quick reload and everything else to go with it, makes it a really good number 7 pick. Coming in at number 6, we have the P63C5. This plane exists in 3 different tech trees, but honestly it doesn't really matter if you have it in the French, the American, or even the Soviet tech tree. This plane is fantastic, and it's the combination of the 50 caliber machine guns, 37mm cannon, the engine in the center, the big wings, the nice flaps. Everything about this plane I really enjoy. I've been able to carry some incredible games with this, and I always get great dogfights playing the P63. It takes a long time to learn, and I've really put in the effort to finally hone in on the P63 and absolutely make it a monster. So much so that I've aced out at least one crew on the P63s. It's absolutely fantastic. I used it to grind out one of my French trees, and I really just enjoy playing it. Cast bomber, it's got those 2 drops of 500-pound bombs, 3 of them total, and it's just a fantastic all-around plane. It's good for low altitudes, it's okay at high altitudes, it's great in a dogfight, and of course, you can get some beautiful reversals with that 37mm cannon. Coming in at number 5, we have the Gloucester Javelin Mark 9. You'll never believe that the Javelin actually made it onto my list, but this thing for me was the biggest challenge that I've ever had in War Thunder that I managed to succeed. The Javelin isn't really a good plane, but it has a lot of charm. And if you can make the guns work, and if you can make the missiles work, and the radar, you can get yourself a very formidable TU-4 killer if you're in the right situations. Of course, it's not going to work all the time, but my god, the Javelin is a really fun plane, fighting against 8.0s and 7.7s, 8.3s, and even some 8.7s. The amount of MiG-15 Bisses I've managed to reverse is incredible, and having it on the list, for me, it's just a must. Coming in at number 4, we have the plane that won the wait, no, not really. The P-51D-20NA. My script says that it actually did win the war, but I think I'm wrong. Don't tell the Americans, okay? Shh. Okay, the plane that won the war. The P-51D Mustang. In all seriousness, this plane is one of the best planes at energy dogfighting in the game. You put it at an altitude advantage and nothing can stop it. It's honestly been one of the most fun planes that I've ever flown, simply because the energy dogfighting tactics you can use against BF-109s and 190s is absolutely hilarious. Watching them struggle against you in your basically what they thought would be an inferior plane is absolutely fantastic. And having a competent squad mate to back you up in a P-51 is always a welcome change. Having those American teams isn't really great, but when you get more than one player that knows what they're doing, my god, you can have some absolute fun in this plane. And that's why it sits at number 4 on my list. Coming in at number 3, we have the Supermarine Swift F7. For me, the Swift F7 is a welcome change from the F1 because it's not really up my alley. But a Supermarine aircraft had to be put in on this list, and because the Spitfire always gets shafted by those beautiful allied teams and those wonderful BF-109s and 190s, I have to put the Supermarine Swift on the list. It is absolutely fantastic. This plane also comes with the most unique missiles in the game at the moment, the Fireflash air-to-air missiles, and it gets 2 of them, which are absolutely perfect for taking down those bombers or those hunters that think that they can run away from you. The Swift F-7 also comes with an afterburner, meaning that it has good altitude performance, and it's also extremely good in a climb, making it one of those planes that you can sort of dogfight with for a little bit and then just burst away like nothing ever happened. And for me, that is exactly what I want in a plane. Something that has good acceleration, good guns, something unique, and is overall somewhat speedy, that I can control the battle. And for me, the Swift is a perfect number 3 pick for my top planes of 2019. Number 2, the F-100D. The F-100D, for me, was the plane that I got used to quite easily. It was honestly one of those planes that you can just pick up and go, and it's absolutely beautiful. Having that acceleration with the afterburner, having the altitude performance, having that first turn on your opponents, that AOA is absolutely incredible, and you really can't underestimate that stuff. Having a big fat wing as well makes it decent at low speed turning, although not enough to outturn a Sabre, which is understandable because it's a big fat plane, and big fat planes tend to go really fast. The F-100D is capable of Mark 1 in level flight in some cases, and is in fact equipped with 4 AIM-9E missiles. It is almost the perfect zoom around the map and shoot off your missiles, get a couple of gun kills, which by the way, best guns in the game, those 20mm, high velocity, good damage output, and they're packed nice and close together. So it's a really easy plane to pick up, and it is a really easy plane to master. And for me, having so much fun in the F-100D in the long run, it just absolutely has to go on my list in the number 2 spot. Finally, coming in at number 1 is the MiG-19PT. At first I absolutely despised this plane because it was just incredibly hard to learn. I just couldn't get used to the guns, the rudder locked up, the air-to-air missiles were pretty boring and meaningless, to be honest. But as you learn the plane, as you learn how to play the plane and learn the guns, learn everything about it, it becomes one of the most formidable opponents on the battlefield. It's by no means easier than the F-100D. In fact, it is probably one of the hardest planes at top tier to learn, aside from the MiG-21. But the MiG-19PT, when you learn it, is extremely rewarding, and then with the buff that has come recently with the introduction of the F4 Phantom, the MiG-19 is probably one of the best planes in the game at the moment. Having that absolutely monstrous acceleration at low altitude, being able to do pretty much everything that you wanted to except beat the F4 Phantom in a straight line, it's one of the most fun planes that you can possibly have, and it's great to have friendlies around with MiG-19PTs because you can just dogfight as much as you want. Because the MiG-19 has acceleration, it has climb rate, it has the guns when you need them, and it also has those air-to-air missiles for when your opponent is nice and slow, so you can pick them off when they can't maneuver out of your way. It's, for me, the best plane that I've ever flown in War Thunder, period. It has reminded me of why I love the game and why I love jets. It's just so difficult to learn, but when you master it, it is easily some of the most monstrous stuff in the entire game. And for me, that is exactly why it gets the top position in my top 10 vehicles of 2019. So ladies and gents, this is my top 10 vehicles list for 2019. Of course, the honorable mentions are great too, and there are so many more that I wish I could have included, but I just had 10 spots to spare, and it really wasn't that amazing. Honestly, there are so many great vehicles in this game, so many that I haven't touched, so many that I haven't even flown yet, and there's just so much to cover. So what I want to do is I want to give it to you guys. What is your favorite vehicle of 2019? In fact, what are your top 10? What are your honorable mentions? Do you have a favorite lineup? Do you have a favorite battle rating? Do you have a certain premium vehicle that you really enjoy because it has a certain taste to it? Is there a certain event vehicle that you absolutely wished you could get or you really enjoyed this year? Was it the Orbital HVG, which kind of should have made it onto my honorable mentions list? There are so many great vehicles in this game, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you enjoyed every single one of them. For me, 2019 was a tough year, but I managed to get through it with the help of you guys, so thank you very much for all the support. It honestly means the world to me. Hopefully looking forward to 2020, we'll have some absolutely amazing times. Stick with me, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm not going anywhere. Until then,